I remember the moment like it was yesterday. My parents' words hit me harder than anything else in my life. Don't come home. Your sister doesn't want you there. The air in the room felt heavier than gravity, and I swear I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in the walls. I was 22, just back from college, and suddenly the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had built a wall I couldn't climb. The sting wasn't just in what they said, it was in the way they said it, like it was the most natural thing in the world to reject me. I froze, my backpack slipped from my shoulders, and then, before I could even process, my sister stepped forward, eyes cold, voice sharper than glass. You should have known this would happen. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my story of betrayal, and if you've ever trusted the wrong person, hit that subscribe button because you are not alone. Here is how it happened. I was reading comments on my YouTube videos the other day, and I realized I wasn't the only one who had felt invisible, rejected, or silenced by the people they loved most. And suddenly, I felt this strange connection, like every story, no matter how painful, is a thread tying us together. That day, I left the house with nothing but my suitcase and a trembling heart. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to go somewhere that didn't feel like walking through a battlefield. I walked past the familiar driveway, past the porch where I had spent my childhood summers, and every step forward felt like a betrayal and a release all at once. I tried to call my sister later that night, hoping for a crack in her armor, a hint that maybe this was a misunderstanding, but she didn't pick up. She never did. And my parents? They stayed silent, their eyes avoiding me as if ignoring me could erase my existence. I thought I had learned resilience in college, thought I could handle rejection, but nothing prepared me for family turning into strangers overnight. I questioned everything. Was I imagining the love I thought existed? Had I misread years of smiles and hugs? Or had they always been waiting for the moment to tell me, you are not welcome here? I spent nights crying silently in cheap motels, clutching my phone, willing someone, anyone, to tell me it would be okay. I tried distracting myself with work, friends, late-night coffee runs, anything to drown the emptiness. And then the betrayal came full circle in a way I never saw coming. Because just when I thought the worst was behind me, I received a text from my sister hours before my wedding that made my blood run cold. I stared at that message as if it had burned itself into my phone screen. You're not supposed to come to the wedding. We never wanted you there. My hands shook. I felt the weight of years of suppressed pain crash down like a tidal wave, washing away every moment I had hoped for a normal family. It wasn't just words, it was the culmination of every time my feelings had been ignored, every time my achievements had been minimized, every whispered insult behind my back that I had tried to dismiss. And now, it was official. My own sister, the person I thought I could count on, was standing in the way of the happiest day of my life. I couldn't breathe. I sank to the floor, my phone clutched against my chest, and for the first time in years, I let myself scream. Not a loud scream, no, I was alone in my apartment, but a silent, guttural scream that rattled every bone in my body. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to crawl back to the little girl I had been who still believed that family was supposed to protect you, not destroy you. The days that followed were a blur of panic and confusion. I tried to reason with my parents first, sending long, trembling texts filled with memories and pleas. Have we forgotten the birthdays I celebrated with you? The times I stayed up nights caring for you when you were sick? How could this happen? No reply. Not one. I tried my sister next, typing and erasing message after message, unsure whether to beg or to confront her. In the end, I sent nothing. Part of me knew she didn't care. Part of me feared the answer I might receive if I pushed too hard. Instead, I did the only thing I could think of. I packed my bags. Not for college, not for a new job, but to escape a life that had become unbearable. I booked a last-minute flight to a city where no one knew my name, somewhere I could disappear without leaving a trail, a place where I could figure out how to exist without their judgment, their cruelty, their cold, calculated betrayal. Landing in that new city felt like stepping into a dream, or a nightmare. The streets were alive, the air smelled of possibilities, yet every time I looked in the mirror, I saw the same scared, lonely girl. The kind of girl who believed love could be unconditional, the kind who thought family meant safety. And now, all of that had been ripped away. I found a small apartment with peeling paint and a view of a brick wall, the kind of place where no one would expect anything of me. I threw myself into work, picking up freelance gigs, late-night shifts, anything that would keep me busy and keep my mind from circling back to my family's betrayal. I became a ghost in my own life, drifting from one task to the next. And yet, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape the memories. They clawed at me in quiet moments, the birthday cake they pretended to forget, the nights they ignored my calls, the way my sister's eyes turned icy when I entered a room. Every memory was a knife twisting in my heart, reminding me that the people who were supposed to love me most were gone. Then came the night I met him. I didn't expect love. I had convinced myself that my heart was too fragile, that no one could possibly understand the chaos I carried inside me. But there he was, sitting across from me at a dimly lit cafe, laughing at a joke I didn't even tell. His smile was the kind that made you believe in warmth, in human connection, in hope. We talked for hours. I told him fragments of my story, not the whole thing yet, but the pieces I shared were enough to make him pause, to listen, to hold my hand and say, "I see you, I hear you, you're not alone." For the first time in years, I believed him. We fell in love slowly, cautiously. Every touch, every whispered good night felt like stitching a wound that had been open for decades. And yet, even with him, the shadow of my family's betrayal followed me. Every time my phone buzzed, every time I imagined my sister's cold eyes, I felt a pang of fear. Could I truly be happy when they had condemned me? As the years passed, I built a life with him, a life full of laughter, small victories, and quiet moments of peace. I thought the past had finally loosened its grip, until one evening, a letter arrived. It was handwritten in my mother's familiar script. My hands trembled as I opened it, half expecting it to be another rejection. But instead, it was an invitation. "We know we hurt you. Please come home for your sister's wedding. We want to make amends." I stared at the words, disbelief clouding my mind. My heart raced, not with joy, but with fear and suspicion. Was this a trap? A test? Could I trust them after everything they had done? I tried to push the letter away, to ignore it, but something inside me, a fragment of the little girl I had been, whispered, "Maybe this is your chance for closure. Maybe it's time to confront them." The weeks leading up to their wedding were torture. I called my sister, leaving voice messages I didn't know if she would hear. I texted my parents, each word carefully measured, each sentence trembling with the weight of years of hurt. And still, silence. Then, just days before the wedding, the final blow came. My sister sent a message that shattered whatever hope I had left. "You still don't belong here. Don't even think about showing up." I sat in my apartment staring at the screen, my body frozen. The air seemed to thicken, suffocating me. My mind raced. Should I fight for my place in this family? Should I stay away forever? Or should I finally confront the betrayal face to face, even if it meant exposing my heart to more pain? That night, I cried for hours, not just for the rejection, but for the years lost, for the love I thought existed and never did, for the innocence that had been stolen from me. And yet, in the midst of tears, a resolve began to form, a quiet, dangerous kind of resolve. I would go to that wedding. Not for them, not for my sister, not even for my parents. I would go for me. I would go to stand tall in the ruins of everything they had tried to destroy, to reclaim the dignity they had stripped away. And so, with trembling hands but a heart full of courage, I booked a flight home. Every step toward the airport felt like walking a tightrope over a chasm of fear and anger. I didn't know what awaited me, whether I would be embraced or humiliated, whether I would finally have the confrontation I had dreamed of, or whether I would witness yet another betrayal. All I knew was that I couldn't hide forever. The past had followed me like a shadow, and it was time to face it, come what may. Because sometimes the people who hurt you most are also the ones you can't stop thinking about. And sometimes the only way to heal is to walk straight into the fire they set for you years ago. I froze at the airport entrance, my suitcase weighing more than I could bear, not because of the bag itself, but because of the storm waiting for me on the other side. My parents stood there, faces unreadable, smiles that didn't reach their eyes. And then my sister. She wasn't alone. A man I had never met before stood beside her, tall, confident, exuding a calm that made my nerves jangle even more. Something in their body language, her hand brushing his arm, the way she leaned slightly into him, made my chest tighten. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I wasn't the same scared girl I had been years ago. I had survived their betrayal. I had built a life without them. But walking into that airport, seeing them so close, so seemingly indifferent to the chaos they had caused, I felt the old wounds pulse anew. My mother's lips curled into the kind of practiced smile you offer strangers, not family. "You came," she said, her voice light, almost casual. I nodded, gripping my suitcase handle like it was a lifeline. "I did," I replied, voice steady, though every muscle in my body wanted to run. My father didn't speak. He just stared, his eyes flicking between me and my sister, like he was watching a tennis match he had no intention of interrupting. My sister, on the other hand, smiled at me, cold, calculated. There was no warmth there, only the weight of years of resentment. The man beside her cleared his throat politely, offering a hand. "I'm Michael," he said. His smile was genuine, but I didn't trust anyone's intentions here, not even his. I shook his hand, trying to appear composed. "I'm here," I said. That was all I could manage. Every other thought, every other feeling had been swallowed by a tide of anxiety. We drove in silence toward the house, the city blurring past the windows. The quiet was suffocating, and every turn of the car made my stomach twist with anticipation. I imagined 100 scenarios, confrontations, apologies, screaming matches, but nothing could prepare me for the sight that awaited me when we pulled into the driveway. The house was the same as I remembered, but different. The porch where I had spent countless summer evenings laughing with my sister was spotless, almost sterile. Flowers bloomed in neat rows, her meticulous touch evident everywhere. And there, standing at the door, waiting for me, was a woman I didn't recognize, her face familiar yet strange. "She's my sister whispered, almost as an afterthought. My mind tried to process the words. Another sister? I hadn't known she existed. How could my parents hide something like this from me for years? Before I could ask, my sister pulled me inside. The hallway smelled of fresh paint and polished wood, an attempt to mask years of decay beneath the surface. My parents followed silently, expressions unreadable, as if they were spectators rather than participants in the reunion of a lifetime. Dinner was tense, almost surreal. My parents made polite conversation, asking me about my work, my life, my partner, careful not to touch on the past, as if ignoring it could erase the years of pain. My sister, however, didn't hide her disdain. Every comment I made was met with a subtle dismissive remark, a smirk, or a raised eyebrow. The new sister, her name was Emily, observed quietly, occasionally glancing at my sister for cues. There was something calculating about her, like she was learning how to navigate a household already poisoned by rivalry. Halfway through dinner, I felt my resolution beginning to waver. The air was thick with unspoken accusations and long-held grudges. I remembered the suitcase I had carried, not just filled with clothes, but packed with years of hurt, anger, and longing for validation. Could I unpack it here, in this house, without being crushed by the weight of their judgment? Then my sister stood up abruptly. "I need to show you something," she said, her voice sharp. She led me down the hallway away from the watchful eyes of our parents and Emily. My heart pounded. Was this another trap, another humiliation waiting to happen? We stopped in front of a room I didn't recognize. The door creaked open and I froze. Inside were boxes, hundreds of them, labeled meticulously, filled with letters, photographs, and journals. My sister's expression softened for the first time, almost human. "I found these in the attic," she said. "They're from when we were kids. I thought maybe you should see." I stepped inside, my hands trembling as I opened a box. The first photograph I pulled out was of the three of us, my sister, Emily, and me, smiling in the summer sun. My little heart remembered that day differently. I had felt loved, safe, part of something bigger than myself. And yet the next photograph shattered that illusion. It showed my sister and Emily alone, whispering and pointing at me, their expressions cruel. I sank to the floor, my chest tight. Why didn't you tell me about Emily?" I asked, my voice breaking. My sister's eyes flicked away. "It's complicated," she said. "Mom and Dad wanted to protect you, or maybe themselves. I don't know, but you have to understand, Emily was different. She needed attention, and I couldn't stand in the way." I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to tear down the walls that had kept me blind for so long. But instead, I sat in silence, letting the years of confusion, neglect, and betrayal wash over me. When I finally looked up, my sister handed me a journal. "Read this," she said. "You need to know the truth." I opened it carefully, almost afraid of what I might find. The first entries were written in childish scrawl, recounting innocent memories of our family. But as I turned the pages, the tone shifted: resentment, jealousy, manipulation. My sister had written about me in ways I couldn't have imagined, blaming me for things I had no part in, painting a picture of a family torn apart by my very existence. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The betrayal wasn't just my parents' doing. My sister had played her part, crafting a narrative that justified exclusion, rejection, and pain. And Emily? Emily had been caught in the middle, a pawn in a game I didn't even know I was playing. Tears blurred my vision as I slammed the journal shut. "Why? Why would you do this to me?" I whispered. My sister's shoulders sagged. "I was scared of losing my place, of being invisible. I didn't know how else to survive." The room was silent except for our ragged breathing. I wanted to hate her, wanted to scream and walk away forever. But part of me, a part that had always loved her despite everything, wanted to understand, wanted to forgive, wanted to find some shard of the sister I had once known. Before I could respond, Emily appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "I never wanted to hurt you." Her words were almost enough to make me collapse, relief mingled with pain. But the storm wasn't over. My sister looked at me, a shadow of guilt crossing her face.
"There's more," she said. "Something Mom and Dad have been keeping from you for years. I didn't know if I should tell you, but I think you need to know before the wedding." My heart thudded in my chest. "What is it?" She swallowed hard. "It's about the day you left for college and why we told you not to come home." I felt the air leave my lungs. I had lived with that rejection for years, replayed it in my mind endlessly, blamed myself, blamed them, blamed fate. And now the reason, hidden for so long, was about to be revealed. My sister paused, her gaze piercing. It wasn't just jealousy or fear. It was something that could have changed everything if you had known the truth. The weight of her words pressed down on me. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to run, but my legs refused to move. I had come seeking closure, but instead I felt the storm intensifying around me, threatening to engulf everything I had fought so hard to protect. And in that moment, I realized that the wedding wasn't just a celebration, it was the stage for the final confrontation, the reckoning I had been running toward my entire life.
My sister led me through the quiet hallway, each step echoing like a drumbeat of dread in my chest. I followed silently, my suitcase forgotten, my thoughts spinning. What could possibly be so urgent, so monumental, that it had been hidden from me all these years? She stopped in front of a door at the very end of the hall, its paint chipped and faded. She hesitated for a moment, her hand hovering over the doorknob. "Are you sure you want to see this?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. I nodded, though a part of me wanted to turn and run. "I need to know," I said firmly. "I've waited too long." The door creaked open to reveal a room I had never entered before, though it was unmistakably part of my childhood home. Dust floated in the beams of late afternoon light, catching on memories I didn't yet recognize. And then I saw it. A small, locked chest tucked into the corner, chained and padlocked. My sister stepped closer and pulled out a key from her pocket. "Mom gave me this a few weeks ago," she said, her hands trembling. "She said, you deserve to see the truth before your wedding, but it's heavy. What's inside will change everything you thought you knew." I swallowed hard. The air in the room seemed thick, heavy with anticipation. My fingers shook as she handed me the key. I slid the lock open and lifted the lid. Inside were dozens of letters, photographs, and a folder labeled in my mother's handwriting, "The reason you were sent away." I picked up the folder with care, my pulse hammering. The first document was a medical record, one I had never seen, one that explained the sudden distance between my parents and me. My eyes widened as I read. I had a rare genetic condition, something my parents had discovered in my infancy. It wasn't life-threatening immediately, but it carried risks they didn't feel ready to manage while also caring for Emily. My heart raced. So this was why they sent me away? Not because they didn't love me, not purely out of malice, but because they were scared, desperate to protect me, in their own twisted way. Tears blurred my vision. Relief mingled with anger. Years of resentment, of feeling unwanted, of thinking they had abandoned me. All of it now had a context I hadn't imagined. Yet the resentment didn't vanish. The secrecy, the isolation, the way they had let me suffer in silence, it was still a betrayal. Then I opened a photograph. My parents and Emily were in a hospital room, smiling at a tiny baby, but my sister had scrawled across the margin, "We were scared she would never understand. We thought it was safer this way." I sank to the floor, the folder slipping from my hands. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "Why did you let me hate you all these years?" My sister knelt beside me, her hand on my shoulder. "We thought you'd never forgive us," she admitted. "We didn't know how to fix what we had done wrong, and honestly, we were ashamed. You were angry, and we were scared of making it worse." I wanted to scream, to throw the folder across the room, to demand more than an apology. I wanted the years back, the nights I cried alone, the friendships I had strained because I carried this invisible burden of family rejection, the trust I had lost in people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Yet, as I looked at her, I realized she wasn't lying. She had been complicit, yes, but she had also carried a burden of guilt, of fear, of shame. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the smallest flicker of empathy. Before I could respond, the sound of footsteps on the staircase made my heart leap. Emily appeared, holding a small box, her face pale. I found these, too," she said, placing the box beside me. Inside were old childhood mementos, letters I had written to my parents, drawings I had made for birthdays that had gone unnoticed, even a diary filled with the dreams of a young girl who had only ever wanted love from the people she trusted most. I flipped through the pages, and a mix of nostalgia and grief hit me like a tidal wave. Every word, every drawing, every hope I had poured into the past was a reminder of what I had lost and what I had endured alone. Emily knelt beside me, tears in her eyes. "I didn't know any of this," she said softly. "I never wanted to be the reason you felt left out or unloved." I closed my eyes, letting the tears fall freely. For years I had blamed everyone around me, my parents, my sister, even fate itself. But the truth was more complicated. It was messy, painful, human. They had made mistakes, yes, but they hadn't destroyed me. I had survived, grown stronger, and built a life despite their choices. Then my sister's voice cut through the silence, quieter now, almost fragile. "There's one more thing," she said, "something Mom and Dad never told anyone, and I wasn't sure if I should, but you deserve to know before the wedding." I looked at her, my chest tight. "What is it?" She hesitated, then opened the last envelope in the chest. Inside was a letter addressed to me, written years ago by my mother. Her handwriting was shaky, almost frantic. "My dearest, I wish we had been brave enough to tell you sooner. We made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but they came from love. We didn't want to lose you, but we feared the consequences of your condition. We never imagined it would hurt you this much. Please forgive us someday. We love you always." My hands shook as I held the letter. The words, so simple and heartfelt, broke through the layers of anger and pain I had built around myself. I felt the weight of years lifting slightly, though not completely. Forgiveness wasn't immediate, trust wouldn't be restored overnight, but understanding had begun to seep in. And then I realized something else, something that sent a chill down my spine. My sister's tone had shifted subtly, almost hesitantly. "There's one final truth," she said, her eyes glistening, "something that explains why the day you left for college they told you not to come home and why everything escalated to this point." I held my breath. "Tell me," I said. My voice was barely above a whisper. She swallowed hard, then revealed it. "Your sister, Emily, she was born with complications we didn't understand at the time. Your parents, they needed help, and in their fear, they made the choice to focus on her survival. It wasn't fair to you, and it wasn't right, but it explains the decisions that tore this family apart." I felt the room tilt. All these years of anger, of feeling unwanted, of blaming myself, it was still a betrayal, yes, but now I understood. It had been fear, love misdirected, and human error intertwined. I sat back, the chest of letters and memories spread around me, and let the truth settle in. The anger still simmered, but clarity replaced confusion. The betrayal had roots, but the roots weren't poisonous. They were tangled, flawed, but not entirely without care. And yet, even with this revelation, the tension wasn't gone. The wedding loomed in just a few hours, and the confrontation I had imagined for years was only just beginning. The air was still thick with unspoken words, promises broken, and fears unspoken. I knew one thing for certain. Walking into that church would mean facing the full weight of the past, and nothing would ever be the same again. The day of the wedding arrived like a storm I couldn't escape. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, smoothing down the dress I had spent months choosing. Every stitch, every fold felt heavier than it should, weighted with the history I carried. The lies, the secrets, the years of rejection. My partner tried to calm me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You're going to be okay," he said softly. "You've survived worse. This is just another moment." I nodded, but the knot in my stomach refused to loosen. Today, I wasn't just a bride. I was a daughter, a sister, a survivor of years of betrayal. Every step I took down the aisle would be an act of courage and confrontation. As we arrived at the venue, I saw them waiting. My parents' faces were etched with a mixture of guilt and apprehension. My sister stood beside them, her posture stiff, almost defensive. And there was Emily, looking nervous, like she wasn't sure what role she was supposed to play in the drama about to unfold. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. Every eye in the crowd seemed to sharpen against me, but I focused on the family I had left behind, the ones who had caused so much pain and yet now stood in front of me, vulnerable in their own way. The ceremony began, and I walked slowly down the aisle. Each step echoed memories of betrayal and isolation, but also of survival and resilience. I caught my sister's gaze halfway, and for a brief moment I saw fear flicker in her eyes. Fear that she might lose control. Fear that her carefully constructed walls would finally crumble. When I reached the altar, the officiant's words barely registered. My mind was consumed by the people around me, my parents, whose mistakes had shaped my life, my sister, whose jealousy had cut deep, and Emily, who had been caught in the crossfire of a family torn apart. After the vows, as everyone began to settle, my sister pulled me aside. "You need to hear this," she said, her voice tight. "There's something I haven't told anyone, something that explains everything. The day we told you not to come home, why Mom and Dad acted the way they did." My heart raced. I had thought I knew the full story, that the letters, the chest, and the journals had revealed everything. But now, standing in the decorated hall, surrounded by friends and strangers, I realized there was still layers I hadn't peeled back. She led me to a quiet corner, away from prying eyes. "When you left for college," she began, swallowing hard, "there was an incident, something Mom and Dad never told you because they didn't want to hurt you. It involved a family secret, one that could have changed everything if you had known at the time." I held my breath. "What is it?" "It was about inheritance," she said, her voice trembling. "Mom and Dad had assets set aside for you, but when they discovered complications with Emily's health, they feared that if you stayed, it would create conflicts they weren't ready to handle. They made a choice. Painful, yes, but one they thought was necessary to protect both you and Emily." I felt a mix of shock and anger, years of feeling unwanted, of being shut out, of believing I had been abandoned. Now it was tied to decisions made behind closed doors, decisions made out of fear and misjudged protection. "Do you understand?" my sister asked, her eyes searching mine. I nodded slowly, though my chest ached. Understanding didn't erase pain. Forgiveness wasn't immediate, but clarity, finally, clarity was beginning to seep through the fog of resentment. As the ceremony concluded, my parents approached me. My mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "We thought we were protecting you. We thought we were doing the right thing." My father simply nodded, unable to find words. His silence said more than any apology could. I took a deep breath and made a choice. I wouldn't let this day be defined solely by anger or betrayal. I would acknowledge their mistakes, yes, but I would also assert my presence, my voice, my right to exist fully and openly in this family, even if it meant confrontation. The reception began, and the tension simmered beneath the surface. Conversations were polite, laughter measured, but under every polite word lay the unresolved conflicts, the unspoken accusations, the long shadows of the past. At one point, my sister approached me again. "You need to tell me about something else," she said, her voice tight. "Something you've never known, something that happened years ago, something you have never known."
I followed her into a quiet room off the main hall. She handed me an envelope, worn at the edges. Inside were letters between my parents and a distant relative detailing financial arrangements, medical advice, and family secrets that had been hidden from me. I read through them, heart pounding. Each revelation was like a strike against my assumptions, reshaping the narrative I had carried in my mind for years. My parents' actions, though flawed, were tied to fear, love mismanaged, and desperation to protect me. My sister's jealousy, though painful, was rooted in insecurity and the burden of trying to navigate a fractured family dynamic. As I processed the letters, Emily appeared again. "I never wanted to be part of the hurt," she said softly. "I wish I could have done more for you, even back then." I felt a wave of emotion I hadn't expected, a mixture of sadness, anger, relief, and even compassion. The years of isolation, misunderstanding, and miscommunication weren't erased, but they now had context, layers that explained, though didn't excuse, the pain. Just as I was beginning to collect my thoughts, a commotion erupted in the main hall. One of the guests had overheard snippets of conversation about the family secrets, and whispers spread quickly through the room. The fragile veil of politeness lifted, and the undercurrent of tension surged to the surface. I walked back into the crowd, my presence commanding attention. I realized that this wedding, the culmination of years of pain and secrecy, had become a stage not just for celebration, but for confrontation, for truth-telling, for reconciliation, or destruction. I locked eyes with my sister, and in that moment a silent understanding passed between us. Nothing would be the same after today. The truths revealed, the secrets exposed, the pain acknowledged, all of it would define the next chapter of our relationship. And then, just as I was about to take my seat, my sister leaned in close and whispered something that made my stomach drop. "You need to know there's one more person here who knows everything, and they've been waiting for the right moment to speak." I froze. My mind raced. Who could it be, and what would they say? The music swelled in the background, masking the rising tension as I realized that the full weight of the past was about to collide with the present, and that the wedding, meant to be a celebration, was now the stage for ultimate reckoning. I froze, staring at the figure across the room. The air felt heavier, almost suffocating. Everyone's attention seemed to converge there, though no one had yet realized what was about to happen. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might echo off the walls. It was my uncle, my mother's brother, someone I hadn't seen in years. But it wasn't his presence alone that made my stomach drop. It was the look in his eyes, a mixture of triumph, guilt, and something darker, something that whispered that he knew more than anyone else in this room, more than even my parents had told me. He stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Miriam," he said, his voice calm but carrying an undertone that made my skin crawl. "I think it's time you knew the truth about your family and your sister." I felt every muscle in my body tense. I wanted to run, to hide, to retreat back into the fragile safety of ignorance, but the weight of years of betrayal and secrets anchored me to the spot. My uncle's eyes flicked to my sister, who suddenly looked smaller, vulnerable, even guilty. "Your sister, she hasn't been entirely honest with you. None of your parents have, and it's time you heard it straight." I swallowed hard. "What are you talking about?" My voice was steady, but my hands trembled. He gestured to a table where he had placed more letters, documents, and photographs. "Everything you've been told, the reason you were sent away, the inheritance, the medical issues, it's all true in part, but there's more, something your sister and parents have hidden even from themselves." I took a tentative step forward, my mind racing. What could possibly be worse than what I already knew?
I had endured years of feeling unwanted, ignored, and betrayed. I had faced my parents' coldness, my sister's jealousy, the secrecy surrounding Emily, and yet now there was more. He picked up a folder labeled Confidential in my mother's handwriting. This contains evidence of decisions made years ago, choices that shaped your childhood and the trajectory of your family, he said. Your parents were scared, yes, but there were also forces at play that they couldn't control. And your sister, she made choices that hurt you, whether she intended them to or not. I felt my stomach twist. I had always thought the betrayal was simple, parents acting out of fear, a sister acting out of jealousy, but now it seemed infinitely more complex, layered with deception, manipulation, and secrets that went back decades. I took the folder from him, hands trembling. As I opened it, photographs and documents spilled out, revealing truths I could scarcely believe. There were letters between my parents and distant relatives discussing my condition, strategies for managing Emily's health, and even mentions of third-party interventions, consultants, doctors, and advisors brought in to guide decisions. And then I saw it. A letter from my sister, written in her own hand that I had never seen before. It detailed her feelings of inadequacy, her jealousy of me, her resentment of my existence. But it also revealed her fear, her guilt, and her desperate attempts to navigate a family already fractured by secrecy. I sank to the floor, my chest tight. Everything I had believed, everything I had carried as pain and betrayal was true, but incomplete. The narrative I had built in my mind for years was only a shadow of the full story. My uncle's voice cut through my thoughts. "There's one more thing," he said, "something no one else has told you, and it changes everything." I looked up, heart pounding. "What is it?" He hesitated, then handed me a photograph. My eyes widened as I saw myself as a baby, lying in a hospital crib, with two figures hovering over me, my parents and a woman I didn't recognize. Her face was partially obscured, but the presence was undeniable. "That woman," he said, "was a nurse who raised concerns about your medical condition, concerns that were ignored by your parents and sister at the time. She warned them about the risks, but they didn't listen. And because of that, you were sent away for your own safety, but it created a rift in the family that no one knew how to repair." I felt the room tilt. The betrayal, the secrecy, the years of pain, it all made a kind of tragic sense now. My parents had acted out of fear, yes, but also out of ignorance and desperation. My sister had acted out of jealousy and fear, and I had endured the consequences, carrying the weight of their choices alone. Tears blurred my vision as I absorbed the enormity of it all. For years, I had replayed moments in my mind, blaming myself, blaming them, imagining what I could have done differently. But now I realized that the past was not simple. It was messy, human, and fraught with mistakes made out of love, fear, and desperation. And yet, even with this understanding, the anger remained, sharp, biting, and raw. Understanding didn't erase the hurt. Forgiveness didn't come instantly. But clarity gave me power. I stood up, clutching the folder to my chest, and faced my sister. Her eyes were filled with tears, her posture vulnerable for the first time that day. "I didn't know how to tell you," she whispered. "I was scared that you'd hate me forever." I took a deep breath, my voice steady but heavy with emotion. "I do hate the way I was treated. I hate the years of feeling unwanted, invisible, and unloved. But I also see now. I see that we were all trying to survive in the only ways we knew." Emily stepped forward, placing a tentative hand on my arm. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said softly. "I was just caught in it all."
The room seemed to hold its breath. Guests whispered, unsure of what was unfolding, but I didn't care about them. This was about my family, my history, and finally facing the truth. I turned to my parents. My mother's eyes glistened with tears, my father's face pale and tense. "I understand now," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I understand you acted out of fear, but that doesn't erase the pain. I've carried it for years, but we can try to fix it, if we're honest, if we're willing." My parents nodded slowly, shame and relief mixing on their faces. It was a fragile truce, tentative and uncertain, but it was a start. Then my uncle cleared his throat, drawing my attention. "There's one last truth you need to know," he said, "something that will affect not just today, but the future of this family." I braced myself. My heart raced. "What is it?" He handed me a small envelope, sealed and marked with my name. Inside was a letter from my mother, written before I was even born. It revealed a long-hidden secret about my birth, a truth that explained the dynamics, fears, and decisions that had shaped every moment of my childhood. Reading it, I felt the room spin. The words revealed sacrifices, decisions made under impossible circumstances, and a love that had been buried under layers of fear and misjudgment. It was overwhelming, almost too much to process, but it also brought a strange sense of relief. The confrontation, the revelations, the unraveling of years of secrets was complete. The past had finally been laid bare. And yet, as I processed it all, I knew one thing. The wedding, meant to celebrate love, had also become a crucible, and nothing about my family, my relationships, or myself would ever be the same again. The church hall was silent, save for the soft murmur of guests and the distant strains of a piano. Everything seemed normal on the surface, flowers in full bloom, candles flickering, guests whispering politely. But beneath the veneer of celebration, a storm was brewing, one that had been gathering for decades, and now, finally, it was about to erupt. I stood near the entrance, clutching the last envelope my uncle had given me. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of the truth I was about to unleash. The contents of the letter weren't just revelations. They were evidence, proof of every secret, betrayal, and decision that had shaped my life. And now, in this room filled with people who had silently witnessed my suffering, it was time for the world to see. My parents approached me, hesitant, unsure. My mother's eyes glistened. "Miriam, please," she whispered. "Not here. Please don't." I shook my head. "It has to be here," I said, my voice steady. "Everyone deserves to know the truth. If we hide it again, nothing changes." My sister, Emily, and even my uncle watched, tense, as I unfolded the letter and began reading aloud. The words detailed decades of secrecy, the medical complications at my birth, the difficult decisions my parents had made out of fear, the jealousy and manipulation of my sister, the sacrifices Emily had endured. The letter left no detail hidden, no justification unexamined, and as I read, gasps rippled through the crowd. Guests whispered behind hands, eyes widening in disbelief. Some shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to react. But the tension wasn't in their murmurs, it was in the faces of the family I had once believed I knew. My parents' shoulders sagged, my sister's jaw tightened, and Emily's hands trembled. When I finished reading, silence descended like a heavy curtain. For a moment, no one moved, no one breathed, as if the weight of decades of secrets had pressed down on every soul in the room. Then my sister stepped forward, her voice trembling but defiant. "Miriam, you don't understand," she said. "I made mistakes, yes. I was jealous, and I was scared, but you think I did it to hurt you? Everything I did out of fear. Fear of losing my place in this family. Fear of losing my parents' love." I looked her in the eyes, my own fury simmering.
Fear doesn't justify betrayal. You chose to silence me, to exclude me, to let me suffer alone. You played a part in every tear, every sleepless night, every moment I thought I was unloved. Fear doesn't erase that." Her hands shook as she tried to reach for me. "I know, and I've hated myself for it every single day. I didn't know how to make it right. I thought avoiding confrontation would protect both of us." I swallowed hard, my chest tight. Protecting me by hiding the truth? Protecting me by letting me carry pain I didn't deserve? That's not protection, that's cruelty. Emily stepped forward next, voice barely audible over the tension. "I never wanted any of this," she said. "I was just caught in the middle. I loved you, Miriam. I really did, but I didn't know how to fix what was broken." The air in the room felt electric, charged with decades of unspoken words, anger and grief finally spilling into the open. My parents moved closer, tentative, their faces etched with guilt. "My child, we thought we were doing the right thing. We feared for you, for Emily, for the family. We never meant to hurt you like this." I took a step back, letting the words wash over me. Understanding was dawning, but forgiveness wasn't immediate. It had to be earned. Every apology, every tear, every confession in this room was a step, but it didn't erase the past. Then my uncle spoke again, his voice cutting through the thick tension. "There's one final truth," he said, holding up a small folder. "This involves not just your family, but the consequences of their decisions on your life, decisions that could have changed everything for you." I took the folder from him, my hands trembling, and opened it. Inside were letters, receipts, and documents I had never seen, proof of arrangements, decisions, and sacrifices made in secrecy, all tied to my childhood, my health, and my future. There were notes from doctors, lawyers, and family advisors detailing the careful, sometimes brutal choices made to protect me while navigating impossible circumstances. I felt a dizzying mix of shock, anger, and clarity. My parents acted out of fear, yes, but also love, deep, flawed, human love. My sister's actions, though painful, had been motivated by fear, not malice. And Emily had been caught in a web not her own making, trying to survive in a family that had fractured long before any of us had control. I closed the folder, taking a deep breath, and faced them all. "I understand now," I said, voice strong. "I see the mistakes, the fear, the love misdirected, but I also see the pain, and that pain is real. It doesn't disappear because we finally speak the truth." The room was silent. Guests watched, unsure whether this was reconciliation or another eruption of conflict. My sister's shoulder slumped, tears streaming down her face. Emily held my hand tentatively, seeking connection. My parents, pale and fragile, looked at me with a mixture of hope and fear. And then the moment of truth, the one I had feared and hoped for all these years, arrived. I took a step forward, facing my parents and sister. "I forgive you," I said, slowly, deliberately. Not because what happened was okay, not because the years of pain vanish, but because I refuse to let it control the rest of my life. I forgive you because I choose my own peace, not because I forget the past. My sister fell to her knees, sobbing. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you." Emily clutched my arm, tears falling freely. "I love you, Miriam. I always have." My parents reached out, trembling, their hands hovering over mine. "We love you too," my mother whispered. In that moment, decades of secrecy, betrayal, and pain seemed to converge into a fragile, almost miraculous understanding.
The weight of the past remained, but the acknowledgement, the confrontation, and the forgiveness created a path forward, a possibility of healing, of rebuilding, a family renewed, albeit imperfectly. And yet, even as relief washed over me, a flicker of unease remained. My uncle's final words echoed in my mind. "There's one final truth," he said. I turned to him, heart racing. "What is it?" He held up a photograph, slowly, deliberately. It was of my sister and Emily, taken years ago, before I had even been sent away, with a letter tucked in the frame. "This," he said, "explains the final piece, something your parents and sister have hidden even from themselves, and it will change everything you think you know about your family." My heart skipped. I gripped the edge of the nearest pew. "Show me." He hesitated, then laid it on the table in front of everyone. The photograph, the letter, the hidden truths, they revealed not just mistakes, fear, and jealousy, but a legacy of decisions that would echo through generations. And as I read the words, the room held its breath. Because the final revelation wasn't just about the past. It was about the choices that would define the future, and about the power we each held to break the cycle or continue it.
The letter trembled in my hands as I stared at my sister, my parents, and Emily. Every eye in the room was on me, waiting, holding their breath. I had spent years imagining this moment, the confrontation, the revelation, the reckoning, but nothing could have prepared me for the weight of the truth. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice steady. "This changes everything," I said, my words deliberate. "Not just for me, not just for this wedding, but for all of us. We've carried lies, secrets, and fear for decades, and now we can't undo that, but we can choose what comes next." My sister's shoulders shook with sobs. I don't know how to fix this," she admitted, voice breaking. "I've hurt you in ways I can't take back, but I don't want to lose you." I let her words hang in the air, heavy with both guilt and hope. The truth had been brutal, but it had also created space for something fragile, something new, the possibility of rebuilding. Emily stepped closer, her hands trembling as she reached for mine. "Miriam, I love you, and I want us to be a family if you'll let me." I looked at her, really looked, and saw a girl who had been caught in the same storm of secrecy and fear that had defined my childhood. Her mistakes had been minor compared to the pain I had endured, but her intention had always been love. And in that moment, I realized forgiveness wasn't just about others. It was about freeing myself from the burden I had carried for so long. My parents approached, faces pale and trembling. My mother's voice cracked. "We were scared. We thought we were protecting everyone, but we see now how much damage that caused. Please, let us try to make it right." I took a deep breath, feeling years of anger, hurt, and confusion collide, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, begin to ease. I can't undo the past, and I can't promise that it won't hurt again, but we can try together. A fragile silence fell across the room, the weight of years of secrets pressing on every heart. Then slowly, one by one, my family nodded. The acknowledgement wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was a start. The wedding continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. The music, once merely background, seemed to carry a note of triumph over adversity. Guests whispered, noticing the subtle change in the family dynamic, though they didn't understand the full depth of what had transpired. During the reception, I took a moment to step outside. The cool evening air hit my face, and I inhaled deeply, feeling the tension in my chest ease slightly. The stars above were indifferent to human drama, yet somehow they felt like witnesses to this fragile truce. I thought back to every moment that had brought me here, The rejection, the isolation, the years of pain, and the small victories that had kept me moving forward. I realized that my journey wasn't just about betrayal, it was about survival, courage, and resilience. Every tear, every heartbreak had shaped me into someone capable of facing even the most devastating truths without collapsing. When I returned to the reception, my sister approached again. "Miriam, I don't want to lose you, and I want to do better. I want us to be honest with each other, no more secrets." I nodded, feeling the weight of years slowly lift. "We'll start now, and we'll keep trying. It won't be perfect, but it will be real." Emily hugged me, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of family, a connection that had been buried beneath layers of fear, jealousy, and betrayal, now slowly reemerging. Later, as the night settled in, my parents and I sat together, quietly. They spoke in fragmented sentences, apologizing, explaining, and trying to reconcile decades of mistakes. I listened, sometimes interrupting, sometimes letting the words wash over me. And for the first time, I felt the possibility of peace, not complete, but real. In the following days, conversations that had been impossible for years began to happen. Letters were exchanged, apologies offered, and slowly, trust, fragile and tentative, was rebuilt. I realized that reconciliation wasn't about forgetting the past, but about acknowledging it, understanding it, and choosing to move forward despite it. I also recognized the most important lesson of all, that family isn't just defined by proximity or biology. Family is also defined by accountability, love, and the willingness to face hard truths. Even when betrayal cuts deep, the act of confronting it can create a space for healing. As the weeks passed, the fractures in our family didn't disappear completely. There were still moments of tension, flashes of old resentments, and reminders of the years we had lost. But there were also moments of laughter, connection, and shared memories, now framed with honesty and understanding. And in the midst of it all, I discovered something I had long forgotten: my own strength. The strength to face betrayal, the strength to demand the truth, the strength to forgive, not for them, but for myself. I began to write again, chronicling the journey I had lived through, the betrayal, the secrets, the confrontation, and the path towards healing. My story wasn't perfect, and it wasn't complete, but it was mine, and in sharing it, I realized the true power of narrative: to release the pain of the past, to illuminate the path forward, and to remind others that they are not alone in their struggles. One evening, I returned to the old chest of letters, photographs, and journals. I carefully placed them back in their corner, knowing that the past would always be a part of me, but that it no longer had to define me. I closed the lid gently, feeling a sense of closure. The betrayal that had once felt like an endless storm was now a chapter, a story with lessons, growth, and resilience. I understood now that life wasn't about perfect families or flawless relationships. It was about navigating imperfections, confronting truths, and choosing love and honesty over secrecy and fear. And as I stood there, reflecting on everything, I whispered to myself, I survived. I faced the betrayal. I confronted the truth, and I chose to live, to love, and to move forward. For the first time in years, I felt whole, not because the past had been erased, but because I had faced it, claimed it, and transformed it into strength. The wedding, once a symbol of exclusion and betrayal, had become a turning point. It wasn't just a union of two people in love. It was a crucible of truth, confrontation, and redemption. And though the road ahead would still have challenges, we had taken the first step towards healing together.